Hello again. It seems today I need to talk about GamerGate once again. It seems that in my last video on this subject I wasn't as clear in my views as I should have been, and that I came off a bit one-sided. Which I will admit, after rewatching my video, that does seem to be the case. So I decided to remake my video going into much greater detail on my views towards GamerGate, and hopefully my viewers this time can see where I stand and reply respectfully this time, whether it be here on YouTube or on Twitter. First up, I see how there is a lot more events and issues in GamerGate than I listed last time. Too many, in fact, to cover in this video. The main reason I'm not covering a lot of them is because so many are pure speculation on which side is right or wrong. But then again, that can be said for the entire cause, so what the hell do I know? I should also say that while my opinion still is that I do not support GamerGate, I will say it has shifted a bit, and that I'm more understanding towards GamerGate supporters, but my overall opinion still stands. So, starting off this time, I do want to say I'm probably going to stop talking about GamerGate after this video. The reason is because I've discovered that this subject is very similar to a subject of religion and politics, in the sense that at this time it's near impossible to have a civil and mature conversation about it without someone flying off the handle within 5 minutes. Unless everyone in that conversation is not part of the groups being mentioned and are just neutral parties. In fact, actually, comparing GamerGate to a political subject actually works really well, because it seems like GamerGate is a political uprising, or at least is similar to it, which maybe that's where the comparisons to groups like the KKK and ISIS come into play, but I really don't support those claims at all. They are simply uncalled for, and no matter what is said to receive claims such as that, those kind of responses just make the individual using the claim look ignorant and like a child. This is in fact where a lot of my struggles with GamerGate comes into play, because since I do not support GamerGate, a lot of them seem to think I'm completely against them, like the anti-GamerGate groups, which is not true, or at the very least, is not true to that extreme. Another issue I have with the GamerGate movement is that recently, as in the last month, it's become a very volatile group. And honestly, I think the reason for this is there are so many different types of people with many different ideologies, and they're all going at each other's throat inside of GamerGate. It's almost like, the best comparison I can think of is if you made a group consisting of Republicans, Democrats, and anarchists, and expecting it all to work out. That's not going to work. At some point, all hell is going to break loose, and everyone is going to be at each other's throats. Also, so many people in GamerGate blame the death threats and rape threats on trolls, but I find it kind of hard to believe that all these threats are done by trolls, and I'll explain why right now. The fact is, GamerGate is a group that, for whoever's fault it is, whether it being journalists or GamerGate, they have been alienated from the gaming journalist world, and even some aspects of the other parts of the gaming community. And they have become demonized, admittingly with good reason. I mean, if a group is openly combatant with you, then you're going to blacklist them too. That's common knowledge. This is the same thing. But however, when you alienate people like this, they become radical every single time, which leads to people using more extreme methods. I'm not trying to condone these actions by any means, however. I just want to explain that these people are most likely not trolls. They are most likely your own people. And I know a lot of people are going to feel insulted by this and don't want to accept this, but think of it this way. This is exactly the same way how eco-terrorist groups split off from peaceful groups trying to defend the ecosystem. Maybe comparing them to terrorists is a bit extreme, but hopefully you guys can see the point I'm trying to make, in the fact that I'm not saying all GamerGate supporters are like this, but some have seemed to split off, and just calling them trolls is just ignorant, and being closed-minded to the fact that maybe they aren't trolls might be a little counterproductive. To be completely honest, I don't really care if they send threats to people that aren't family or friends of mine. Does that make me a bad person? Many people would say so, but nobody knows for sure, because that's just their opinion. However, what I am worried about is the public image gamers have spent decades forging in the general population to become accepted and not just be seen as a bunch of fat losers who just play video games all day while they drink Mountain Dew and eat Doritos. Whether game journalism or GamerGate destroys their image is irrelevant, because if that happens, both sides will end up losing. Think of it this way: if gamers go back to being ashamed or embarrassed to be called gamers, then the gaming industry will lose money because sales will drop, and that is a direct hit on journalism as well as to GamerGate. I would much rather deal with a biased gaming site than destroyed gaming community where everyone puts us on the same level as, say, 4chan. I honestly think this petty war ends before this gets out of hand. Or at least I think it should end before it gets out of hand. One side needs to just man up and apologize, or simply back off at least a little bit. And war isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. You need to pick your battles, or you will exhaust your resources before you actually need them. I've said this many times to people on Twitter, and nobody seems to understand this. They keep making the comparison about them being gamers and that they'll just use cheat codes, which is just moronic. I know the journalists have done some shitty things and that I'm not justifying them, but this needs to be out of the public eye so much, or else all gamers again end up losing. Because right now, a lot of people are thinking that gamers are just spoiled brats who just essentially will throw a tantrum and dox people and send death threats if they don't get their way. I know GamerGate is not completely at fault for this, but you guys are at fault a little bit, because you guys are the ones who instigated this war, and whether the journalist groups are the ones who are spitting out this image is irrelevant, because you both are at fault to some extent. That is the point I'm trying to make, and that I do not want that image to become commonplace for gamers in general. But another thing that I have found GamerGate to be very hypocritical, because they complain that gaming is being censored by feminists. However, with all the threats and trying to get support to back up companies over what somebody says or did is no different. Hell, it may even be worse, because you are potentially ruining somebody's career over an opinion that someone has. If you don't like what somebody says, then tell them, but don't go and stalk and harass them. That fixes nothing except attempting to silence them, which is no different than the censorship you guys claim to be so upset about. I understand wanting a better system of ethics in game journalists. Trust me, I do. And so do a lot of people, but this isn't the way to get this done. It's going to get to the point that the authorities will get involved, and then the cause will all be for nothing, because you guys will be seen as a radical group, and possibly even a pseudo-terrorist group, for that matter. I'm not saying we shouldn't have this discussion, because I do think it needs to be talked about in some extent. However, it needs to be done in a civil and mature manner. Otherwise, insults are going to be thrown around, and each side will just think the other side is a troll, which will solve absolutely nothing, and the entire conversation will just descend into chaos. As far as GamerGate saying sponsors of a website removed, I also have a few things to say about that. Not exactly a big surprise, but here we go. You guys seem to brag that constantly that you guys got sponsor removed. However, no matter how big the site is, you got a few sites to pull sponsorship, or you got a few companies to pull sites from one site. Only one. If they were big sponsors, however, it's still only one site. And a site that writes great articles at that. The boycott that you guys use is supposed to be a weapon used as a last resort. But you guys, instead of pulling it out when you were in a dark alley cornered by thugs, you guys pulled it out, cocked it, and shot it when they came within 15 feet of you. In short, you guys misused the boycott horribly. Just because you disagreed with one article doesn't mean the entire site and its employees should suffer. If you don't like what's being said, stop clicking their links, stop following them on Twitter, and stop giving them the light of day. Because at the end of the day, whether the publicity is good or bad, it will always be seen as good publicity. But this ends up going back to the remark I made earlier about this being essentially the same thing as censorship that you guys are claiming to be against. If it was one company being censored, one site being attempting to be censored, that's fine. But you guys constantly try to pull this shit on other sites also. That is censorship. And while boycott in itself is not censorship, I will say that, the motive that you're using the boycott is. If you're doing it just because someone has an opinion that you guys do not like, that is censorship. In fact, none of this even mattered because Intel just recently, as of last night, started sponsoring Gamasutra again. And I'm sure the other companies that you guys got removed will soon follow suit because it's clear their investigation that they did in the Gamasutra didn't prove what you guys were claiming. Or at least not to the point to where they should remove supporting them. Also, guys, one thing real quick I do need to say. I know this isn't GamerGate, and I know this is a touchy subject because a lot of you guys claim you guys aren't doing this. But guys, seriously, stop with the harassment of women and men. There's no need for it because it doesn't solve anything. Pulling the race, gender, or sexuality card does not solve a damn thing. It never has and never will. All it does is antagonize people. Well, that's all I'm going to say today, and hopefully this will be my last video I'll ever have to make on this subject, and if you guys try to antagonize me again like last time, I'm just going to start ignoring you. Not going to block you, but I'm just not going to give you guys a live day. Otherwise, it's just going to start more drama, and I'm done with GamerGate. I really am. I may casually tweet something about GamerGate once again, but as far as being against GamerGate or being for GamerGate, I'm going to just stay in the middle. I'm going to go back to the middle, just try to be neutral again, and just not even give two shits about GamerGate. Unless something big happens, I should say. If something big happens, like a huge revelation in the whole petty GamerGate war, I might make a video then, but as far as GamerGate in general, I'm going to try to stay away from that subject as much as possible. So, have a good day everyone, and I will see you guys in the next video.